All right, so looks like we are up and running. Sometimes this thing likes to auto start, sometimes not. So this time decided to auto start. So welcome everybody to another Saturday live stream here at the Good Old Gamer. I want to thank you all for joining me and kicking off your weekend right by talking about the latest and greatest tech news. Now, I do want to preface this live stream. There is going to be some pretty big announcements for the channel. I'm going to do that a little later on in the video once more people get in here. But yeah, so we'll just kind of kick things off and wait for everybody to get in. Jersey C had this question, and he's asked it twice before the live stream got started. But he was asking, how legit is the 3080 Ti in January rumor? Seems like it would make sense to me, to be perfectly honest with you, but there's no hard evidence behind it. So whether or not that's going to happen, it's still up in the air. Is NVIDIA going to replace the 3080 with something? Absolutely. They have to. If you guys saw my video yesterday, I went through Steve Walton's numbers over on TechSpot. The 6800 XT is superior to the 3080 in pretty much everything. The 3080 wins under certain conditions, but the 6800 XT wins under a lot more, in my opinion. Now, granted, you need things like SAM, so you need a 5000 series CPU, which you can't buy. Story of 2020, but you know, you need that and a 500 series motherboard to really get the most out of those cards. So it's not the best implementation. I do believe that AMD will eventually bring SAM to all of its platforms, especially if NVIDIA is going to do it. This would be the smart move by them to preempt that, in my opinion. All right, and then we have Pater5. He's saying in the Balkans, even retailers are scalping cards. Yeah, so let's start with that, because that seems to be the big thing that everybody wants to talk about right now is the limited availability and scalping. I don't know why any of you were surprised. The limited availability, it's more limited than we were anticipating from pretty much everybody, except for maybe Sony and Microsoft. I think their availability was kind of in line with what everybody was expecting, but this happens every time a console generation launches. Anytime there's a new, PlayStation and Xbox, they all get sold out immediately, and then they're sold for double on eBay. And then they get replenished in like January, February. That's normal. And the same thing always happens with GPUs as well. If you don't get it day one, you gotta wait 3 to 6 months. That's just how these things work, guys. I know the past few launches, like with the RTX 2000 series, those were always in stock, but those were crappy value. Nobody wanted one of those cards except for the 2080 Ti because, people are crazy, and for top tier performance, they'll spend an unlimited amount of money. But besides that card, they were all in stock because nobody wanted them. And the 5700s and 5700Xs, they sold out right away, but yeah, they were replenished rather quickly. Once again, it's because NVIDIA already offered product that was about the same performance, and yeah, it's a little bit cheaper. So anybody expecting any different than what we're seeing now, that's on you. It's your fault for not anticipating this. Now, granted, like I said, I was expecting a few more people to get their hands on them, but not many more. This happens every time, guys. So when a product launches, 6 months after that, that's when you can get it at MSRP. And that's just the way it's going to go till the end of time. So let's temper our expectations a little bit more at this point. All right. Will the RTX 3060 Ti actually have some stock? I don't know if NVIDIA is even going to bother with the 3060 Ti at this point. It really depends on what they want to do with their lineup. They have to replace the 3080 and 3070. Those need to go away. Those cards, they're just not competitive, especially not at those price points. And dropping them down to price points that would make sense isn't really NVIDIA's play. More than likely, they're just going to knock off both cards, stop selling them entirely, and replace them with higher gigabyte models. So that's where the 3070 Ti and 3080 Ti come in. So we know the 3080 Ti can't be any faster than a 3090. Just can't. GA102 doesn't do any more than that. So even if it comes in with 20, 22, or 24 gigabytes of RAM, comparatively, it's not going to be that much faster than the 6800 XT anyway. So they can't charge like $1,000. They can try, but they're really not going to be able to get away with it unless it has like 24 gigs of RAM. Maybe they can get away with it then. But if it only has 20, realistically, they're going to have to price it very close to where the 3080 is, and makes that kind of irrelevant. And if they bring in a 3070 Ti that's somewhere in between a 3070 and a 3080 at, let's say, $599, at $699, the 10 gigabyte 3080 doesn't make sense. So to just phase those out completely makes a lot of sense. Now, bringing out something like a 3060 Ti with 8 gigabytes also won't make sense because they're going to need 12 gigabyte RTX 3060s. So that's just going to confuse the market even more. This card's faster, this card has more VRAM, and has a lower price tag. I don't think that's really the best marketing move for them. So realistically, their best play here would be to wait until they could refresh their whole lineup top to bottom. So I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to do whatever they want. Obviously, it's NVIDIA. They always do. But yeah, I would just knock off both the 3070 and 3080s, stop selling them entirely. Just basically come out with a 20 gig model and a 16 gig model of the 3070 Ti. And then, I don't know. I mean, if they're going to use the 104, this is what really kind of sucks for NVIDIA. The 104 die obviously can only really use, either 8 or 16 gigabytes of memory. Now, they could cut down the memory bus and put 12 gigabytes on the 3060 Ti. Maybe that's an option for them. But if it doesn't have enough memory bandwidth to feed, the 3060 Ti, they're going to be leaving a lot of performance on the table. So I don't know if it's going to perform where they want it to, if they do that. But yeah, basically this is how it goes, guys. Top tier, your $500 to $700 cards have to have at least 16 gigs of RAM. AMD has basically made that the standard. So whether NVIDIA likes it or not, if you don't have 16 gigs of RAM, you need to be cheaper than $500. And then between the $300 and $500 price point, it's going to be 12 gigs. It's just going to be the standard. And NVIDIA is going to have to keep up with AMD because that's what AMD plans to do. They're going to do 12 gigabytes on their next tier, and then 8 gigabytes will be your $200 to $300 range, or maybe it'll be like $180 to $300. So yeah, it's going to be 8, 12, and 16 from AMD, and NVIDIA just needs to keep up. All right, I got a good evening, so I'm guessing you're over there in Europe. Most of you guys are, a lot of you guys are, so that's pretty awesome. Thank you for tuning in. For you guys, it's starting to get into the evening time, beer o'clock. Let's see, I'm looking at a 6800 for myself and hoping stock will be higher in January. Yeah, I would assume January is probably going to be a good time. You have to remember, most people blow all of their money between basically October and December. January is the best time to buy things because everybody else is broke. So typically, I don't spend a whole lot of money during that time frame and save it so you can get the crazy good deals. And then once the tax return season, at least here in the U.S., kicks in late February, that's when, the average shopper starts kicking back in and supply goes back down. So yeah, basically January 1... well, maybe like January 7, about a weekend after the new year and everybody's back at work. So January 7 to basically mid-February, that's the best time to pick up stuff from the holidays that you couldn't get. So I think that's going to be a good window for a lot of you guys. But what's also going to be interesting is we're going to have CES, and there's going to be, obviously, new announcements. And, there might be something else that you're going to want. So more information is always better. For example, perhaps we'll know about 3080 Ti's and 3070 Ti's and all of that at that point. I expect to hear about Navi 22 at that point, which will be your 6700 and 6700 XT. I'm basically thinking 2080 Ti level and probably like 2080 Super on the cheaper one, somewhere in there. So those are going to be pretty good. Those will probably have 12 gigs of RAM. But yeah, NVIDIA is going to be more interesting this time because they have to refresh their whole lineup. Besides the 3090, which should probably come down a little bit in price, but they can leave it there if they want to. It's fine. It's not a card that anybody should be recommending anyway. But pretty much 3080 on down, that whole lineup needs to be revamped. They need to compete on memory size. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of people going, there's no point in me buying these cards outside of the feature set. I don't know if you guys saw yesterday's video, but I went over all the reasons to buy NVIDIA in that video. It was funny. I was being called an AMD shill and I was being called an NVIDIA shill. Meanwhile, I was talking about the advantages of both companies. It's really great how objective a lot of the community is about this stuff. Oh, they said something good about the company I don't like. They must be a fanboy. No. If you say nothing good about a company, no matter how much you might hate them, then you are the fanboy. Because every company that is successful does something good. I just want to throw that out there because I got a lot of that yesterday. 6 p.m. in France. Yeah, that would make, yeah, so you're GMT +1. That would make some sense. You got 6 in Italy. All right, so yeah, for you guys, it's beer o'clock. Go ahead and drink up. We're just going to kick back, have some fun, talk about this stuff. And like I said, big news coming to the channel. You know, obviously with my wife being in the hospital and everything and me being gone for a couple weeks, spent a lot of time thinking about how to revamp things, and we're going to be going kind of a different direction. Just talking about graphics cards and CPUs. I know a lot of you guys, that's kind of like your fix, you're jonesing for it. But in all honesty, we're getting to the point of diminishing returns. So my next video is going to be huge, and it's going to basically shift everything, because everything that you think is important in PC gaming is not. Like frame rate is not that important. Resolution isn't even that important. Believe it or not, I'm going to be able to prove this to you guys in the next video. And yeah, it's going to be awesome. So basically we need to, as a community, I'm going to help you guys shift your mindset and get away from, oh, I need faster and higher frame rates, because you really, really don't. It's hilarious. Let's see here. If I build a system with a 3080 or Ti, 5900X, and a 750, yeah, 750 should be fine on that. 750 watt power supply. All right, so I don't understand those people defending corporations, those who just want to take their money and don't care about them. Yeah, I mean, to me, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's one thing to defend something that's getting an unfair shake. So, for example, I saw a couple of reviewers, actually, through the comments of yesterday's video, I saw a couple other reviewers out there that really did not give the 6800 series a fair shake and came up with some pretty harsh criticisms that were very unwarranted. Essentially, they were just very unbalanced. That I don't like. I mean, it's good to be critical. Like, I was very critical of AMD in my video yesterday. Meanwhile, I was telling you it's better than the 3090, but it also is worse in some regards. However, you know, it's you got to be fair about it. You got to look at it objectively. NVIDIA has the feature set. There's no arguing this. Now, a lot of people, that's a big deal, and that makes a lot of sense. But AMD has the performance per dollar and performance per watt crown. And like I said, when you see the 6800 XT without SAM beating the 3090 at anything, doesn't matter if it's just one benchmark. If it beats it in anything, that's a big deal. But beating it at 1080p across the board is really crazy. And then when you throw SAM on, I think the 6800 XT will match or even beat the 3090 at 1440p. Now 4K, I think it'll still hold the crown, but not by a whole lot. So $650 card competing with a $1,500 card. That's the real takeaway for me, personally. All right, Neo Human, thank you so much for the 5 spot. tGOG, love your content. Keep up the good work. Cheers from France. Thank you so much. All righty, so yeah, I got Andrew OLED. Yep. So I think we've got most. I don't know. Well, we got enough people. We can talk about it a little bit more. But yeah, so the next video is going to be about the LG OLED. So I kind of want to talk to you guys about this because there's going to be a lot of pushback from the community, because marketing will tell you one thing. I'm going to tell you straight up. They've been lying to you this whole time. Higher FPS is not necessary. Higher frame rate or higher resolution does do a thing. It does. And they're both effective, but as you'll see in the next video, and I'll show it to you, on an LG OLED 1080p, actually, I'd say even my Xbox One, the base model, the original launch model, I would rather play on that 900p, like 60 or 30. I'd rather play on that than a $5,000 PC on the most expensive LCD on the planet. That's how transformative the LG OLED is. It's not just another display. It is so far beyond any LCD technology that it's you'll notice it immediately. Remember when you got your high refresh monitor and you move the mouse around, you can kind of see the arrow, and it was like, oh man, it was kind of clear. You could actually see it while it was moving. It wasn't just a giant blur. Well, if you move it fast enough, it's still blurry, even on an LCD. The big difference about the OLED is you can see every individual frame 100% crystal clear. There's no smearing of the frames. So you don't get any of that like natural motion blur crap. So you get a much cleaner image playing. So 30 FPS isn't the best on the OLED, but 60 FPS I would argue is better than 144 on LCD. Linus actually did a pretty good video. I'm going to use some of his footage because I don't have a 1000 FPS camera like he does. So that will be in the video. But he went ahead and clearly demonstrated it takes 360 hertz on an LCD to match or to come close to 120 on the OLED. And the OLED was still cleaner. So that means you don't need those crazy high frame rates anymore, which means you don't need really fast CPUs for gaming anymore. And then basically GPU will just determine what resolution you want to run at. And since the OLED TVs, they're 4K, I guess they make an 8K one. I would just skip that. But since it's a 4K display, you basically want 1080p or 4K because 1080p scales perfectly to 4K. 1440p does not actually look that great on the OLED because it doesn't scale perfectly. So essentially, the only two resolutions in the world that matter is 1080p and 4K. And the only frame rates in the world that matter is 60 and 120. All the rest of that stuff is gone because none of you guys should be gaming on any other display other than the LG OLED. So that's basically what the review is going to be tomorrow. So I figure I'll go ahead and let you guys get the jump on that so we can start answering some questions here, because a lot of you are going to be like, well, that's not what I said or what I heard. 1440p looks good to me. Trust me, everything that you're using now will look like junk the second you look at even 60 FPS on an OLED. That's how hilariously better it is than whatever it is you got in front of you. Unless you have an OLED, in which case, well, then it'll look like that. All right, let's see. See what you guys got going on here. I wonder how many people are wiggling their mouse cursor. I'm betting anybody with a high refresh when I brought that up probably was. It's like, oh, well, that looks pretty good. I don't know. Like, I got a 144 hertz monitor I'm looking at right now. I can clearly see the frames blending together. It's because it can't switch fast enough. On the OLED, it's perfect. Like, you can literally see they're different frames. And it's a huge deal. Not to mention that the color quality and, you know, black levels, all the rest of that's really great too. To me, that's not that big of a deal. I don't care about color bleed through and all that. For me, it's the gaming experience. And simply put, you cannot get a similar gaming experience on any other display. Maybe a CRT, but CRTs aren't as clear. With the OLED, it's got the clarity of the LCD, but it's got the fast switching like a CRT. So it's basically, and I've said this before in other videos without actually testing it, I was just taking other people at their word. But now that I've seen it, yes, that's exactly what it is. You basically get the best of both worlds. And the best part is LG OLEDs are available. You guys can actually buy those. And that's what you guys should be investing your money in. Forget new video cards. It's better to run an RX 470 with, you know, a 2200G Ryzen on an OLED than, you know, a 5900X with a RTX 3090 on an LCD. That's how big of a difference it is. Without that monitor, I can't even recommend you buy anything else at this point. Do they make 24-inch OLED? No. See, that's the downside. So it's not all sunshine and roses. The problem with the OLEDs are they're not really good for monitor use. You can't use them as a monitor. You would need to, like, if you have a gaming setup and you want to stay there, like I game in my living room primarily, so it's not a big deal for me. It works fine in the living room. But like down here, if I wanted to game at my desk, the OLED would need to be a secondary monitor because this would still be necessary to do work because you can't have the OLED on with any static images. So like the bar at the bottom of Windows, like your clock and all of that will eventually burn in. However, playing games and stuff, nothing's really static on there except for maybe like a mini map. But as long as you're not gaming for like 24 hours at a clip, that'll be fine. So yeah, essentially, if you're going to use it in a setup like this, and that's something we'll tackle in a future video, I've actually reached out to LG to see if they could send me the 48-inch model. I already spent money on their 55-inch. I love it. It'd be nice for them to send over a 45 or the 48, and then we can kind of see how you can integrate it into a traditional PC setup without being overly intrusive, and set it up as a secondary monitor. So that's where you would want to play your games, is on the OLED, and then do your work on the LCD, because this won't have any burn-in. Plasma was also awesome. I mean, it was, but the problem was the input latency was so horrible. I was watching a video on that here recently, and the input latency just isn't very good on those. I mean, they came out like at the beginning of the flat screen era, so it kind of makes sense. With the LG OLED, the input latency is like blazing fast. I actually noticed significantly lower latency than compared to my previous television, which was a 1080p 120 hertz. So I mean, it still had 120 hertz going on. The OLED's even faster than that, so that's pretty awesome. It's all about smoothness and clarity, basically what you're saying. How long do you think it'll be before those OLEDs are affordable to the average Joe? They're as affordable as they're going to get. 1500's as cheap as these things are ever going to be, especially at those sizes. So that's it, guys. I mean, you might as well buy one. You can wait for micro LED, but that's going to be about 5 years out. So you're going to be gaming on an awful display. And the whole time, so for the next like 5 or so years, I'm going to be telling you, don't bother upgrading your computer. Buy an OLED until you guys do on that one. Now, I'm not being sponsored by LG or anybody like that. I'm just telling you guys, this is an experience you have to see for yourself. I'd say go to the store, go to your local Best Buy, pick one up, throw it on a credit card, and if you don't think it's the best thing ever, return it. They'll let you just return them. There's no fees. You got like 14 days to basically test it out. Amazon, same thing. If you click the link in the description, I have my Amazon store. I got all the OLEDs on there. The CX series are the ones that you want because it has all 4 ports as HDMI 2.1. You had the CX, and then there's the BX model. Only 2 of them are HDMI 2.1s, and the color quality, from what I read, isn't quite as good. It's like $100 more for the CX. So you should just go that route. But yeah, if you click the link in the description, I have my Amazon store in there. They're all there. So Amazon's got free returns as well. So you could try it out. And then, like I said, you'll instantly see it once you do it. Because like I had just the Xbox for a while because my folks were here. I didn't feel like moving my PC up there to experience it. So just the original Xbox was better than any PC gaming experience that I've had. And we're talking, like I said, 900p medium quality settings, 60 FPS-ish. And my Xbox doesn't even have VRR because it's the original VCR looking model. So VRR is another big one. All right, so if I were to get an OLED, for me, a console makes more sense for a living room setting. Well, I mean, not necessarily. We could talk about that, actually, especially if 60 FPS is like 144. That's actually better than 144. So 60 FPS on the OLED is better than 144 on your LCD. Better. Like, way better. 120 FPS on the OLED is freaking insane because you can literally see, like I said, perfect clarity on each frame if you turn motion blur off. And this is one of the reasons why consoles don't make a whole lot of sense, because they love their motion blur. Motion blur was designed to smear the image so you don't notice the limitation of the LCD technology. So on an OLED, motion blur is actually the enemy. You don't want it because the OLED is removing the natural motion blur. So if you turn it off on a PC, the clarity is so much higher. Now, not all games use motion blur, and not all games use it horribly. But if you buy a console, most of the time you can't turn that off. So that's one of those like trade-offs. It might actually be worth just building a cheap PC for your living room, or what you could do is maybe build a cheap or get a thin client in your workstation area, put your gaming PC in the living room, and then, you could stream into your, office or whatever for that. So there's a lot of different options out there, and that's kind of where the channel is going to go. We're going to look at different ways to making things work and finding the most cost-effective solutions. But it's all going to be based on the fact that if you're a gamer and you don't have an OLED, you need to just go buy one. That's step one. because until you have one of those, you don't need anything else. Unfortunately, like I said, they are kind of expensive. The smaller ones, there's only 2 manufacturers that I could find. One's a 15-inch display, and then Asus has a 22-inch display. I know a lot of you guys are going, 22? That could work on a desk. It's $4,000. $4,000 for a 22-inch OLED display. So that's why I'm taking that one off the table as a possible option. You're better off getting one of the LG OLEDs. Now, like Vizio, I think, has OLED, and so does Sony. They've all used the LG panels. So those are just LGs with somebody else's name on it. The reason why I'd recommend going with the LG version is because they are certified with G-Sync and FreeSync and all of that. They have all of the features. And I think the LG model is the only one that, like a Turing-based GPU, can actually run VRR via HDMI. So it's worth spending a couple extra bucks and just going with the guys that actually make the thing and have all the features. I'm a freelance videographer. Could 6800 XT be better than the 3080 for CUDA? No. I still have not seen any results for product editing. I don't know what to buy. I currently have 1080 Ti. So if your software is heavily CUDA dependent and does not offer OpenCL as an alternative option, you're definitely better off going with the NVIDIA. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to the video, typically you don't want to use GPU acceleration. I use it in Handbrake to help encode, but from my actual software, I use CPU only. And like yesterday's video is the first time I uploaded a 4K video, and I rendered that one at 150 megabit. You want your CPU doing all of the heavy lifting when it comes to video production. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I can't tell the difference. If you want the highest possible quality, you have to do CPU only. There's really no GPU out there that can keep up. They're just not designed to do the same things. From everything that I was reading, because I was like, hey, can I GPU accelerate this? And every time I do, it just looks worse. So yeah, I don't think the GPU really matters that much when it comes to video, unless, like I said, if you want to do like compression. For me, I think it works okay. Like I said, I use the NVENC on Handbrake to compress it down. So it was like 10 gigabytes. I got it down to like 2. And the NVIDIA GPUs will do that a lot faster. But that's also for YouTube. If you're doing it for like a professional workload, you want to do CPU and CPU. You never want to do any compression with the GPU. All right, I got an IPS 144 hertz display, 1440p for under 300. Sorry, but a fool and their money will soon be parted. Okay, don't really know where you're going with that. Yeah, I mean, there's been 1440p 144 for a while now. Let's see. Never really liked game streaming. Yeah, well, actually, that's one of the things. Basically, your LCD display looks like you're playing Stadia next to an OLED. That, if you want to, in your mind, kind of picture this, that's how bad your LCD is. I don't care how much money you spent on it. That's how bad your display is. You're basically doing game streaming compared to a technology that, well, is that far ahead. That's actually that much better. That's actually one of the examples I thought up. Let's see. Until they come way down in cost and size, it will not matter. Like I said, 48-inch, and a lot of you guys are looking at $600 graphics cards. It's not worth $600. Just don't upgrade your CPU and GPU for a few generations and get the display. That's where you should be investing your money. You're wasting your money buying anything until you have an OLED for gaming. Just for gaming. Movies and stuff, it's good too, but yeah, it's definitely not there for productivity. But yeah, if you're gaming on an LCD, you're wasting your money upgrading your PC, unless you have an OLED. Trust me, I will have all the evidence in the video. I even have like another YouTuber. I don't know if you guys know ETA Prime. Kind of like his videos. He's got a lot of quirky stuff that he finds, and I like checking that out. But he tested a 15-inch OLED display for the first time. and he was amazed. Like, I'll play a little clip of his reaction to the first time he used an OLED. And this is the reaction that literally everybody has. So either everybody who's used this thing is wrong and you guys are right, or perhaps it's worth, like I said, throw it on a credit card and test it for yourself. You don't even have to keep the thing. You can just test it out and be like, damn, that's amazing, and then save up for it later. What's your thoughts on people poor shaming people for using AMD CPUs and GPUs? Well, that's just dumb. Honestly, I almost shame people for wasting money. Basically, if anybody wants to throw money away, Patreon is down below. I need somebody pumping in at least 5 or 10 more grand a month. So, you know, if you have the money to throw away, I'm more than willing to take it. So, you know, people that overbuy and overspend, these are the idiots. Clearly. I don't care how much money you have. If you're buying something that you absolutely do not need, they're the fools. So anybody shaming anybody for, like, personally, I was thinking about building a machine just for the OLED, and I was looking at the cheapest B550 or even a B450, Ryzen 3100, because 4-core 8 threads, all you really need for 60 to 120 FPS, depending on title. And then just throwing in, I got this guy right here. Mentioned it in yesterday's video. Got this off of Patreon member for a very reasonable price. So thank you for that, dad of 2. But the RTX 2060. So that runs 1080p 60, 1080p 120, no problem if I want to do native. And then DLSS on more demanding titles can get this all the way up to 4K, which is absolutely amazing. And in yesterday's video, I also mentioned average FPS does not matter. When you look at reviews, ignore the average FPS. It could be 10 billion. But if the 1% low is 90 or 60 or 30 or something, that's the only number that really matters, especially when you have VRR, so FreeSync or G-Sync. The only number of relevance is that 1% low, because you need that to be at a certain target. So for most games, like your third person open world, so like Watch Dogs Legions, even something like Call of Duty, I'd prefer the 120, but you can get away with 60. But like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Witcher 3, like those kind of games, as long as you have a 1% low of 45 FPS or better, then with the VRR, it's going to be a perfectly smooth experience. It's going to be wonderful. And then if you're, targeting the 120, so something like Doom Eternal, maybe Call of Duty, Apex Legends, something like that, where you'd want that higher FPS. Really, all you need to make sure is whatever card it is that you're looking at is getting you at least 90 FPS on the 1% low, and then you're fine. The rest of it doesn't really matter. So that's kind of the way that we should be gauging how things are done. Basically, the industry needs to change. Technology has advanced to a point where the old way of looking at things no longer works. Doesn't fit the mold anymore. So basically 1% low, 45 or 90. Past that, like I said, doesn't matter. Because like I said, the OLED at 120, so that 90 on there is better than 240 on an LCD. It is. And like I said, Linus actually has the proof, and I'll show it to you guys. So yeah, we just kind of need to go there. And then, like I said, DLSS is transformative. We need, obviously, a broader standard, so this is implemented in all games. But like I said, $200 to $300 graphics cards. I assume that this level of performance will be $200 this generation once they're available. So if this is all you need for 4K gaming, this 4-core 8-thread, which will eventually become an 8-core 16-thread. So you can upgrade now, or you can do that later. But you can get away with a 4-core 8-thread, $200-300 graphics card, cheapest motherboard, cheapest stock cooler. You don't even need extra cooling, better cooling. Cheapest case. And poof, you have the top-tier, best gaming experience you can get. When it comes to the GPU, basically that'll just determine what native resolution you can run at. That's going to be its only real determining factor. Let's see here. I wonder, did AMD fix the RX 5000 series drivers? Been hearing for the longest time it's not good. I've been hearing the opposite. I've heard that they've actually been really, really good. So I don't know. I don't have a 5000 series card yet. I do, and this is where your guys' super chats are going. So if you guys do want to help support the channel, get your questions, guarantee that I answer them here. This is where they're going. I need to get an RX 5600 XT. I want that to be the direct competitor to this. I got in another RX 580 for testing. I do need a GTX 1060. I basically want to do the 60 series class and compare them in newer games moving forward. I also bought all the parts for the new test bench. Couldn't get any 5000 series CPUs because, well, they're unavailable. But I went ahead and got a 3700X for testing for now, which that's fine. That's going to do just fine. Basically remove any potential CPU bottlenecks. But like I said, in reality, I'm thinking about sending that stuff away and possibly sticking with something even more budget friendly. Because like I said, the only targets that matter are what you need for the OLED displays. Until micro LED comes out, like I said. But that's still a few years out. So I'm not entirely sure if I want to go with kind of more of a traditional test bench, which kind of feeds the narrative of, you know, the mainstream that's been going on for a while. Or should I kind of go the other route, you know, cheapest motherboard, cheapest RAM, cheapest everything, that'll do the job. So I'm not really sure. And then, like I said, just pick up the GPUs because we want to make sure that these GPUs will work. And if some settings need to be tweaked, we can do kind of like tweak guide videos and stuff like that. So that is kind of where the channel will be going. So pretty awesome stuff. I'm pretty excited. FreeSync range on the OLED is 40 to 120. So I don't believe it has LFC. So yeah, basically that's why you want your 1% lows at 45 because your 0.1% might dip below occasionally, but there's so few, it doesn't really matter that much. So that's why the 0.1% low is really important to pay attention to. So if a new game comes out and, you know, let's say your video card, let's say that, you know, you got a 2060 or whatever, you know, and you go check out one of the Steves or whatever, and they're testing a bunch of video cards on that game, make sure your 0.1% low is at least at 45 if it's a 60 FPS title. Now, like I said, if it's like a Doom, a fast-paced game, racing games, you know, games that are designed to run really fast, usually they're much better optimized. You know, that one you want to be around 90. So, yeah. All right, let's see. Thoughts on 6900 XT over 6800 XT? Money isn't an issue for me, thankfully. You're in a good spot, my friend. Will it compete with the 3090? Well, like I said in yesterday's video, the 6800 XT beats the 3090 in actually quite a few things. So, yeah, I would assume that the 6900 XT will probably compete with it in all things and probably beat its face in others. And like I also mentioned in yesterday's video, there's probably going to be a card even beyond that, but I'd expect it to be about $2,000. It'll be the king of the hill type of thing. Probably draws like 400 watts. Liquid cooled though, 32 gigs of RAM. It'll be crazy, but that thing will just completely curb stomp the 3090. NVIDIA will need to move to TSMC 7nm to compete with both the 6900 XT and whatever they come out with above it. All I want to know is how do the new RX cards do in VR? I don't know. Personally, I have no interest in VR. I know a lot of you guys do, or some of you guys, let's be honest. It's a niche of a niche of a niche. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. You might really like it. Most people don't care, unfortunately. And until most people do care, it's just not going to get any attention. All right, if you want to prove your view, then you need to go to the cheapest bare minimum. Okay, well, yeah, I was seriously thinking about it. Like I said, Ryzen 3100. And then I was debating on B550 or B450, because B450s are super cheap now. They got them for like $60 again. But if I want to upgrade in the future, the 550 would be better. It's only like $15 difference. So, yeah, I might actually go ahead and do that because that's all you really need. Eventually, like I said, CPU side, you will need more than 4-core 8-thread for gaming. It's just when next-gen games really start coming out. As long as they're still making ports for the current-gen consoles, 4-core 8-thread's still fine. So, that'll be in a couple of years. The LGs do have LFC, but only if you have 120 hertz enabled. Yeah, I read that it did, but then I heard in practice it actually doesn't. Now, I haven't actually, I guess, run any games, with 120 hertz enabled below. I guess I could test that tonight before I do. Well, I guess the video will be coming out. I guess I could test that before I do the video, so this way I could speak to it a little bit more firmly. Why would it not have LFC if it has a range of 40 to 120? LFC works on ultra wide with the range. Yeah. Well, LFC is one of those things that it has to be implemented by the manufacturer if they want to adopt it. All right, Kaiop901, thank you for the 5 spot. Let's see what we got here. I have Samsung NU8000, 82-inch. It has FreeSync, but does not work with my RTX 2070. Sucks. OLED 77-inch, way too much money. May purchase 6800 XT or wait. Like I said, if I were you, you're better off with a 48-inch OLED than any other display. I'm just putting it that way. Even though it's way smaller and you're not going to like it as much because of that, you're going to like it more because it'll make that big of a difference. Do not waste your money on GPUs until you get yourself an OLED. So either start saving or accept a smaller model. I think the 65-inchers right now, they're on sale. So that's another thing. If you want to get one now. They got the Black Friday deals going on, and they're available everywhere. I saw huge stacks of them at the local Best Buy when I was buying a power supply. So they're easy to get your hands on, but was it the 65-inch was $1,800, I think? That's really not unreasonable. I think they were normally like $2,500, so that's a pretty good deal. I got mine, the 55-inch, normally $1,600. I got it for $1,350. So you just got to look out for, some of these holiday deals, and they're pretty reasonable for what they are. It's the best display on the planet for gaming. Hands down, no question. There's no arguing it. It's so far beyond LCD, like quantum dot and all that crap. QLED is just trying to rip off of the OLED name, but it's just LCD, so it's not even in the same league. Same goes for OLED. Most people cannot afford $1,500 TV or a video card. Come back down to earth, please. I'm going to be honest with you. If you can't afford a $1,500 device that's going to be that transformative, then don't do it, obviously. You could always go with the cheapest stuff, but you're better off, like I said, just use a base Xbox as your gaming device and then take whatever money you were saving up on your PC and use that for the monitor. So it's one of those type of things for you. If you can't afford anything, gaming might not really be where you should be investing your money. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not saying that, $1,500 is a sizable chunk, but especially for PC gaming, if you take a decent PC, even if it's a budget build, you're looking at $600 to $800 right there, just on a basic PC. Monitor, $100 to $200. Keyboard, mouse, $50 for a cheapo combo. So, you're talking about almost a G-spot just to get into PC gaming. Now, if you are a console gamer and you're looking at something like an Xbox Series S at $299 or maybe a PS5 digital at $399, and that's kind of stretching your budget and hitting the cap, you have to remember games are $70 now on these things. You'd be better off, like I said, just buying an old Xbox One, Xbox One X, or a PS4 and just buying games at $5 a pop. I'm just being realistic with you. If $1,500 will break your bank, gaming should not be your primary focus. It's fun to look at, but just play older games. And yeah, just use a cheap LCD. It'll work. It'll do the trick. And once you get down to 30 FPS, which is what the consoles are doing, it does look better on the OLED, but it's still smeary. There's just not enough frames there. It actually looks like, sometimes on movies it looks choppy when they do a pan because they're only 24 FPS shot and they do the pan too fast. So it kind of looks like it's choppy. That's kind of what it looks like on the OLED because there's just not enough data there. So it's like an interval here and then it's like over here. It's not smooth enough. There's just not enough data. So 30 FPS on the OLED. It's cleaner looking, but not much better than an LCD. $1,500 complete PC will give me more gaming pleasure than $1,500 OLED. It won't. That's what I'm telling you. It won't. Your $1,500 gaming PC is worse than a base Xbox. Worse on any LCD. That's how big of a deal this is. Everything you think you know is wrong. And yeah, it's going to be difficult for me to prove this to you guys while you're watching on an LCD. But like I said, Linus has some pretty good footage that I'm going to borrow. And it basically shows you exactly what I'm talking about. Definitively. So there's no real debate about it. And like I said, the only way that you guys are going to know this for sure is to go out and get one or find somebody who has one and play around with theirs. All right, seems like you guys got a pretty good conversation going on. Do any B550 motherboards support the 2600X? No, which is stupid because it makes upgrading very hard. Anybody who bought Zen Plus and wants to go to, let's say, Zen 3, yeah, that's really freaking annoying. So no, you need an X570. Those do support the 2000 series CPUs. Why they skipped it on the B550, I don't know. I really don't, but they don't. What's new with OLEDs? Just prices dropping or something completely new? Sorry, I missed the first part. No, I finally picked one up. The big thing is here recently, they got G-Sync support, and last year's models and this year's models also offer 4K 120 Hertz. So basically, it's future-proof. This year's models, they all have, the CX model, all 4 ports, all HDMIs, or HDMI 2.1. So that's going to last for a very, very long time. Basically, until it burns out, it's going to be the last display that you're really going to need. Let's just be honest. Past 4K, unless you're going above 100 inches, you don't really need 8K. So 4K 120, we know that's going to be the standard by the end of this console generation. So you're basically jumping ahead. The big difference between OLED and LCD is in the pixel switching. I know I already went over this for some of you guys, but for anybody who tuned in a little late, quick refresher. So essentially, each frame you can see 100% perfectly clear. Unlike with an LCD where it kind of blurs them together and it looks like motion blur if you're moving too fast. So you get a much cleaner image on the LG OLED than you do on the LCD. And it's so apparent that even using a base Xbox One, I feel is better than using a $5,000 gaming PC on an LCD. That lower resolution doesn't really matter a whole bunch. It's how clean the image is in motion. And games are all about motion. LCDs are not good at motion. And it's one of those things that if you don't have one, you need to get one. And if you're like, well, it's a lot of money, well, start saving. Because don't waste your money on anything else. You're wasting money buying 6800s and 3080s. Until you have an OLED, buy nothing. That's basically going to be my recommendation moving forward. And the whole channel is going to be based around this. The assumption is going to be that you either have an OLED or you're going to be getting one. Because that's going to be my recommendation for everything until micro LED comes out. Once again, that'll be about 5 years from now. So at that point in time, things will switch. We'll have like regular size monitors that'll be able to do that. But that's basically going to give you OLED-like experience without the burn-in in smaller sizes. But it's so far away that in the meantime, you might as well get the OLED because really you're just wasting your time gaming on any other display at this point. I was at a friend's house with his TV. You could not tell the difference between 720p and 4K at 65 inches on Jedi Fallen Order. Yeah, well, 720p, believe it or not, also scales perfectly into 4K. So, I don't know. You get a lot more jaggies. Like, even 1080p on the 4K display, that's really where you can notice the difference. It's going to be like on the aliasing. Now, if the game has really great anti-aliasing to begin with, like Doom 2016, for example, it smooths them out with the TIA perfectly. Like, there's no jaggies in that game. So 1080p and 4K, it's very difficult to tell the difference on. But games like Watch Dogs Legions, for example, the AA implementation isn't the best, so you can clearly see a step up going to 4K on that display. And that's also using DLSS, because I don't have a card right now that can natively run that game at 4K. I ran older games like the Batman Arkham series, because those are really fun games. And, obviously not that demanding. They'll run at 4K natively. And it's the same thing. It's just, the jaggies on the edges are a little bit more noticeable at 1080p. They're way more noticeable at 720p. But at 4K, they're pretty much gone. So that's the main benefit to 4K. So if those little jaggies bug you that much, you're going to want 4K. But if slight shimmering and slight jagginess isn't really going to bother you, yes, you can easily get away with 1080p 120 on an OLED. And like I said, that's going to be far superior of a gaming experience to anything you have ever played before. So like I said, I recommend everybody try it for themselves at this point in time. Instead of going, oh, it's too expensive. It's worth every penny. It's even worth considering that $4,000 price tag for the monitor-sized monitor. That's how good it is. I actually considered getting that Asus monitor for $4,000. That's how big of a deal this is, guys. My dad has one. I'm going to use that for now. Yeah, I mean, check it out. You'll be able to see it instantly. It's not like something that takes a while and you got to really look hard for it. It's like, oh, crap, this looks way better. My LG CX was a side grade in terms of picture quality. Okay. I was going to say, picture quality isn't that important to me. It's only the motion that matters, because to me, gaming is the most demanding thing that I really care about on my display. What's the situation with HDR content? Do games Windows handle it correctly now? I haven't really tested it out. Personally, I have no interest in HDR myself. That's just me. I have no interest in it. I've seen it before. Makes brighters bright. I mean, I personally don't care. So I turn all that crap off. But that's just me. Good job OLED shaming the rest of us that you're trying to get the 6800 XT or 3080. I'm out because I'm not in that income where $1,500 is not an issue for a TV. Not worth it. Bye. Hey, sorry, man. It's just, that's the way it is. I can't recommend any graphics card. You're looking at 3080s and 6800s, like $600 to $700 graphics cards, but $1,500, that's a bridge too far. To me, that makes no sense for basically a transformative experience. Buying a faster graphics card is going to get you higher frame rates, which might make your game look slightly better on your current display, versus something where your current PC will look significantly better. See where I'm going with this, guys? Long term, that's the cheaper investment, because you don't need expensive video cards. You don't need high frame rate. You don't even need high resolution. I mean, if you want it, you can have it. That's the other upside. You have access to all of that. You got the VRR, FreeSync, G-Sync, so you can go with either manufacturer. It's 4K 120, so it's basically future-proofed. So there's really no reason to worry about getting 6800s and 3080s until you have something to actually use it with. I can actually tell the difference between 1080p and 4K on a monitor, but can't notice it on the OLED. Well, it also has a really good scaler in there. And typically a television or a display of that size, you're going to be further away. So yeah, it's hard to notice. Like I said, I can see the jaggies a little bit. So there is a noticeable difference, but to me, it's very minor. So yeah, you can easily get away with 1080p on the OLED without much of an issue. Something else I wonder about, the LG CX, does it support low resolution such as 720p? Yeah, it supports all of those. I haven't tested 240p, but that's actually going to be one of the videos that I'm going to be coming out with, is how to get around that. So I picked up a RetroTink 2X Mini for the, let me see, I got to get the other guy here. There we go. Okay, so there, N64. So that's actually going to be a video, is N64 and SNES on the LG OLED, and that's going to be a video coming up here soon using the RetroTink Mini, which is very reasonably priced and comes with the S-Video cable to do it. Now, that's not the most optimal way to play, N64 on a modern display. That would be the Ultra HDMI mod, but those machines are like $500 to $800. So You want to talk about a huge investment? That's a huge investment when there's an alternative option at $89. So I know a lot of you guys are going, well, $1,500, that's a lot of money. Well, $1,500 is kind of like the lowest you can get this technology at. So that's kind of where, you know, this debate really needs to be. It's like, this is as cheap as it gets. Now, you can wait till next year. And usually when they close out the models and come out with new models, typically you can get a little bit better price on it. But for the most part, $1,000 plus is going to be it. Now, I know some of like the discount outlets out there sometimes will have them for like $800 or $900, but you got to be super lucky to get those. Let's see. Check out Roman de Gilly on your OLED. He makes amazing HDR stuff. Okay. Like I said, I'm not really a big fan of HDR. I've used it before. I've seen it even on the OLED. And to me, it's, I don't know. I just don't care about it. I don't need things to be brighter. It's just not me. You can't mention OLED without mentioning burn-in. That's the law. Well, I already mentioned burn-in, so we're past that. You might have missed it. So give 1440p a miss, stick with 1080p. Yeah, and I've said that from the beginning. 1440p is a stopgap measure. It's just like 720p. It was a stopgap to get to 1080p. So 1440p is the stopgap to get to 4K. So realistically, it's going to go 4K, 1080p to 4K, and 1440p is just going to kind of be pushed to the wayside. Now, for a display on your desktop, something that's very close to you, 1440p might be as high a resolution as you're really going to need. Some people, 1080p on a display it's too low. They can see the pixels and it bothers them. So they need 1440p. And 4K might be too high of a resolution. So, yeah, in a desktop environment, 1440p does make sense for like productivity and things of that nature. But realistically, even 4K makes sense for that because, you know, if you're going to be doing video rendering, especially nowadays, 4K is the standard. So having that extra resolution does help. So yeah, for gaming at least, 1080p to 4K, skip 1440p. I've said that forever, and this is the reason why. Is the MT32 emulation the same thing as real? Yes, from what I've heard, I've actually used it. Was it Munt? MT32 emulation. For me, it was perfect. It was pitch perfect, but I never really used the MT32 as a kid. I could buy a BX for €1,000. Yeah, the BX, like I said, it's a little bit cheaper. Usually the CX will be 100 more, at least here in the States. And like I said, instead of 2 HDMI 2.1 ports, you get all 4 at HDMI 2.1. To me, that's worth the extra money because eventually, you know, 5-10 years down the road, all devices are going to be HDMI 2.1. So might as well do the investment now. I mean, what's $100 at that point, kind of a thing. But supposedly it also has slightly better image quality. I like to get an LG 1500, but I'd rather get a 3090 with 24 gigs of RAM. Okay, with 3D work. Yeah, so for work, it's different. You know, that's a different thing. But for gaming, getting a 3090 is dumb, and you know it. So, yeah. So for work, go ahead. If that's going to make your workflow better, yeah, always make your workflow easier first. I guess that's first step. That's why I keep saying the OLED is necessary for gaming. Gaming. If you are going to game, make sure it's on an OLED. Because if you're gaming on an LCD, you're basically cheating yourself out of a potentially better experience. And you can, like I said, use lower end hardware to get that better experience. So realistically, you will save money. But for like workflow and stuff like that, yeah, I mean, just get whatever you need. HDR does not increase the color spectrum. It does not. HDR is just brightness. That is just going to 10-bit color. They usually conflate the two, but they are two completely separate things. You can have 10-bit color without HDR. So, yeah, 10-bit color is nice, but HDR is worthless to me. The Asus monitor pricing is laughable. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, but like I said, it's basically the last monitor you'll probably ever need. The problem with OLEDs, like I said, as a regular everyday monitor, is the potential burn-in, which I did mention before. So it's pretty much what you need as a secondary monitor for gaming. Saddened by mining performance of the 6800. I think most people here would disagree. I think the fact that they're not as good at mining is actually a good thing. If you don't have money for an OLED, you can cheap out for second choice. The Sony 900H, $700, can do 4K, 120. Don't waste your money on that. Yeah, so if you can't afford an OLED, buy the cheapest possible thing on the planet. So, for example, like I just got another monitor because this one, some of the ports are starting to die out on it. And I just bought the Black Friday cheapo $130 24-inch 1080p monitor, 144 hertz. It does have FreeSync, which is nice. Because there's no point in investing in any LCD. So just buy the Walmart cheapo bargain bin TV if you're not going to be able to get an OLED, because there's no point in spending money on that technology. It's already out of date. That's the whole point here, guys, is nobody's telling you the truth about this. What you are using is completely out of date, and they're still trying to sell you more of this junk. So it's time to move on, my friends. And trust me, you will not regret it. It is the biggest and most important upgrade for gaming, period. There is no debating this. You will see it when you do it. Do you think ultra-wide will move into mainstream? No. Anything past 16:9 just won't be mainstream. Let's see. I can actually get 34-inch IPS one. That was the best decision so far from TN. I can only imagine OLED jump similar. It's actually much bigger. Like I said, going from LCD to OLED is the biggest jump you will ever do in gaming. It's bigger than ray tracing. It's bigger than DLSS. Bigger than any video card. It's the #1 biggest jump that you will ever have. AMD should partner with LG. Well, NVIDIA already kind of has, because it has the G-Sync logo right on the front of the box. But yes, AMD should have jumped all over that. I honestly can't stand playing PC games in the living room or having a giant TV in front of my desk. Well, just sit further away from it. It's not that difficult. You know, if you don't want to use like a controller, because, you know, living room controller makes the most sense. I mean, they have lap desks and stuff. So, I mean, there are alternate solutions. And that's one of the videos that we'll be doing in the future. Basically, is try to overcome these limitations. And yeah, like I wouldn't want like a 48-inch display like right here. That'd be too close. I'd need it further away for that to make a lot of sense. See, this is why I'm bringing this up now, guys. So Tom Mason's got a question: 6800 XT or 3080 for 1440p? The answer is going to be neither. So until you have an OLED, don't waste your money on any of it. That's going to be my response to that question forever. So really, your question should be, which one's better at 4K? Because if you get one of those cards, you're going to be wanting to run that at 4K on that display. And then, like I said, you can skip the 1440p range entirely and then just go to 1080p. Let's see. RTX 2060 is faster than 6900 XT in Cyberpunk when ray tracing and DLSS 2 is on. Yeah, so you can't compare with DLSS on or not. But with ray tracing, that's one of those things, like, I'd like to test that for myself. AMD really needs to get the optimization in there, but I think that NVIDIA is going to do what they did with The Witcher 3 and just hammer in code that'll just hurt everybody. And the real shame is Cyberpunk, you know, everybody's all hyped about this, but just like with Witcher 3, that game was jank. Game was jank when it came out, and Cyberpunk's probably going to be janky as hell. In fact, Cyberpunk's probably going to be best played on a console because it'll have less jank. That's just my thought on it. I'm going to be getting it. I already have a code on order for it. So I'll be able to test it out on PC, but more than likely, NVIDIA is going to screw this up for everybody. OLED's still not a good value. Well, I disagree. And it's the only thing you should be, if gaming's your hobby and you don't have one, it should be the only focus for you until you have one. All right, let's see. Gaming shipping list. I think you mean shopping list. Divorce, new house, OLED, 4K, and then GPU. Yeah, I mean that kind of work. Uh, 1440p is a lot better than any display higher than 25-inch. Okay, well, you have a pretty interesting way of looking at things. Most people like TVs that are big. I don't think most people want a TV that's like 25 inches or smaller. So, oh, higher than 25-inch. I don't know about that. I mean, for me, I've had up to 32 inches. That's where 1440p makes the most sense. 27-inch doesn't make that big of a difference. And like I said, you know, for gaming, you should be looking at an OLED anyway. Witcher 3 doesn't run well on consoles at launch. Yeah, Witcher 3 didn't run well on anything at launch. It was jank. So I'm really jank. Well, that'd be JANK, by the way. So what I mean by that is it's just screwed up. They just dumped in a ton of unnecessary code to make the game run like dog shit. And NVIDIA is notorious for this. Like I said, doing it to something like Cyberpunk 2077, this is going to piss off a lot of people. A lot of people are going to be mad about this. But, yeah, well, I mean, they're paying for it. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen, but that's my expectation. A lot of people are going to be very upset with Cyberpunk when it comes out. All right, let's see. Got RX 570. Used my OLED TV upscaler. It looks great. Yeah, like I said, to me, that's a better gaming experience than a 3090 with the brand new 5950X on any LCD. I mean, 120 hertz on the OLED, like I said, superior to 240 hertz on an LCD. And like I said, I'll prove it to you guys in the next video. All right, Paul McCaw, thank you for the 5 spot. We got grab yourself a beer after this stream. I'd say you've earned it. Hope your wife is still on the mend. Yeah, she's doing well. She's doing well. Finally took the bandages off today and got all that glue cleaned up. So she's doing well. She started standing up straight a couple of days ago. So everything's going good. Kid's doing good. Everything's trucking along. And like I said, got a whole new focus for the channel because I have to deprogram the community here. Everybody kind of thinks one certain way, and this is the way it is. Just so you guys know, I've had to do this before. I was the first person to come out and blatantly tell you Core i5s were not good enough for gaming. This is back when you still had Digital Foundry and all these guys pitching, you know, 6600Ks and 7600Ks and all of this nonsense. And it was very evident that that was not the case. I was one of the first people on YouTube telling people, that ain't so. Don't buy one of these CPUs if you want a game. But back then, your only other option was an i7. So basically, back then, I told people, spend the extra money and get the i7s, which are still good today. A 4790K still works fine today. 6700K still works fine for gaming today. So when I tell you OLED is the next thing, I'm just a little bit ahead of the curve on pushing this. Nobody else is really talking about it yet. Some reviewers have talked about it, but they don't push it enough because I don't know. Maybe they're just not sponsored enough by LG or whatnot. I don't know. I'm not sponsored by anybody except for, you know, a few ad spots here and there, but they have nothing to do with most of the technology stuff we're talking about. So I can talk about whatever I want and push the market in the proper direction. So OLED's the next one, guys. Getting rid of quad cores was the first one. Helping AMD get back on their feet and actually supporting the underdog. We did that. Now they're just as greedy and money hungry as everybody else. So now it's time to be, you know, all the options are back on the table with that. Now it's time to get you guys on board the OLED train, because the sooner I can put out the videos, prove to you guys that this is the way things are going to go, other reviewers will start looking at that and going, huh, maybe I should test this out. Then they're going to say the same thing I am, because, like I said, you instantly notice it when you're playing games. It's not like, hey, I got to fiddle with settings, and yeah, it looks a little better. You know, unlike 4K, you know, where you're squinting, and you're like, yeah, well, there's some jaggies on 1080, and, you know, 4K is a little bit nicer. No, you turn it on, you move your guy around, whatever it is, you're like, oh, yeah, that's way better. That's way better. And then you never go back. Most ray tracing games do not look any better with ray tracing on. Yeah, it's arguable. It's minuscule because the devs still use other techniques to make the maps look beautiful. Don't rely on ray tracing. Yes. And what I find interesting is the Unreal Engine 5 demo. If you guys remember that video that came out a while ago, they basically came up with global illumination without ray tracing. So it looks like all the features that ray tracing was going to implement, developers are finding ways to do it cheaper without ray tracing. So maybe that was the whole benefit to ray tracing, was to get these new innovations started and maybe pointed some of these developers into the right direction. But yeah, I don't think ray tracing is really going to be that big of a deal. I just don't. Shadows, maybe some reflections, that kind of stuff, but it's just not going to matter that much this generation. Just little niceties that you can turn off anyway and not worry about it. 10400F is 150. Yeah, Intel CPUs right now are actually a pretty good deal, especially if you look at the non-K SKUs, which, to be honest with you, you shouldn't be looking at the K SKUs anyway. They draw way too much power and you need way too expensive of a motherboard. But the non-K SKUs, you can get like the H series motherboards. Was it H410 they're up to now, something like that. They're like 60 to 80 bucks. You can even get the B460, I think it is. Those are like $80 to $100. They're pretty reasonable. Main difference there is just feature set. They're all going to be like 4+2 on the VRMs, which you're going to be getting a 65 watt TDP CPU anyway, so it's not that big of a deal either way. But yeah, like the 10700 non-K, I think that's down to about 300 bucks. That's not bad. It'll definitely compete with the 5600X in gaming. And then in productivity, I think it's still about on par. So that's not a terrible way to go there. And then you have the i3-10100. They're about 100 bucks. So they're actually cheaper than the 3100 from AMD. I was actually thinking about picking one of those up as the test system because those are cheaper and the motherboards are roughly the same price. And all you really need is 4-core 8-thread. And I think the Intel chip might be a little bit faster in gaming under certain circumstances, but I believe the Ryzen chip with the faster memory actually kind of counterbalances that. So, plus I like the upgradability of the AMD platform. That's really the downside to the Intel platforms. Whatever you buy, that's kind of it. You got to sell the whole thing off and then buy a whole new kit when you're done with it. And since we're going to be moving to DDR5 here soon, you'll likely need new RAM as well. So that's the only real downside. But yeah, the prices on Intel stuff right now is actually decent. At least, like I said, on the non-K SKUs. Intel getting discounted way too much in my country. There's no such thing as too much of a discount. Never too much of a discount. More discounts, more better. That's definitely the way I am. 6-core master race. 6 cores is pretty good. 6-core 6-thread, 4-core 8-thread. I mean, that's really all you need for gaming if that's your primary thing. At least for another couple of years. But here soon, like I said, 8-core 16-thread's really going to kind of become the thing. But I don't know if you guys heard, but the rumor is on ZEN3 they'll be going up to, 96-core Threadripper CPUs. So they're not doubling it this time. They're going to go up 50%. And I thought about it, and I'm like, that kind of makes sense. They just have to go to 12-core CCXs, which since the CCX is now like one thing, it's like, well, that's not impossible, especially going down to 5 nanometer. So what that would mean for us is basically the 8 cores should become the new 6 core. So the new $200 CPUs should be the 8 core 16 thread CPUs, and then 6 core 12 thread should be like the $100 CPUs. So I think that'd be pretty good. And yeah, so by the time you need an 8 core 16 thread CPU for gaming, they're going to be pretty damn cheap. Like I said, $200 or even sub $200. So that's why, you know, if you want to cheap out on a CPU now and then upgrade later, that makes a lot of sense. Why the 3090 while the 3080 Ti is coming out soon? I mean, because it's not out yet. So if you're going to buy something, I mean, theoretically, because you can't actually buy those either. Let's see. I looked in October. Intel were still charging a premium. Yeah, well, check them out now. Like I said, this holiday season, they're finally kicking in some deals. Ray tracing is, wow, I can't even tell the difference. In most cases, yeah. Yeah, that's just what it's going to be. Like I said, the global illumination stuff is pretty cool. But, you know, like I said, they're already finding ways around that without using ray tracing. So we know that solution is going to be more cost effective for GPU resources. I also think this is probably the reason why AMD didn't invest huge amounts of their die to ray tracing, because they're like, it's not going to matter, guys. You know, that's just kind of what they're trying to hint at, because whatever AMD implements, that's the standard. Like NVIDIA did pretty good feature-wise with RTX. Yeah, kick some people in the butt. They needed better lighting. Global illumination is really the big thing. That needs to be in all games, and it needs to be done properly. And then things like DLSS and all their AI stuff, they've really moved the needle forward as to what your GPU can do. But when it comes to gaming, AMD's in charge. They set the standard. Whatever they adopt, that's what's going to be the standard. So NVIDIA is kind of screwed there. You know, they have the PC market share, but yeah, I mean, when it comes to overall GPUs being used in the market, AMD is going to have laptops covered here soon, especially with the new ZEN3 RDNA 2 APUs. Oh man, those things are going to kick ass. Anybody using Intel at that point is just dumb. So they're going to have tons and tons of laptops out there in the APU market. They have all the consoles. They're getting into graphics with Samsung. Samsung's going to basically be using AMD graphics in phones. So NVIDIA's got desktop. That's it. And Switch. And yeah, that's it. That's all they got. So they can't really set standards. They can innovate, and then other people have to steal their ideas and make it work on AMD. That's unfortunately the way that the market works right now, because AMD is technically overall shipping more GPUs than NVIDIA ever will, until they buy ARM, and then that could switch. OLED, once you go black, you never go back. The black level thing is pretty crazy, because, you know, all LCD, no matter how many zones it has, there's always all that little bit of bleed through. Having zero bleed through is, it's nice. It's definitely noticeable. Like I said, to me, it's not that big of a deal. I can deal with the bleed through. Like I said, for me, it's the motion thing, but yeah, the black levels, you will notice that as well, like instantaneously. All right, let's see. I noticed R9 270X use still doing with the newest drivers nowadays. Strange world we live in. I don't know what you're talking about on that one, honestly. Intel Z gonna bring 720p gaming to the masses. Yeah, Intel Z's graphics are just gonna get owned by RDNA 2 on APUs. It's just not even gonna be close. Like, even their 2-chip model will probably be beat by the biggest APU. The Infinity Cache is really the biggest advancement for that, because how efficiently that takes care of the memory bandwidth limitation essentially turns your 128-bit bus into like a 256-bit bus for your DRAM. So that's going to be huge, and I'm really interested to see how that pans out. I was really interested in Renoir, but yeah, the new, I think it's Ponte Vecchio. I think that's what it is. I don't know. RDNA 2 and Zen 3 combo that should be out next year. That's going to be game changing. I'll be making a lot of content on that as well because honestly, that's probably all you're going to need. You pair that with your OLED and you're probably going to be good for gaming. It just works. Yeah, so that's Paul's thing. See, mine's the more you buy, the more you save. That's more my favorite quote from Jensen. The more you buy, the more you save. Just buy more. All right, so restarted video from scratch. Man, you're underestimating NVIDIA fanboy loyalty. Only in the PC market. NVIDIA can have 100% of the desktop PC market. Doesn't matter. That's not a market that actually matters. I hate to break it to you guys. Doesn't. The markets that actually matter, laptop, single board computer, server, that's where NVIDIA does have a major lead. Professional level, NVIDIA's got a major lead there. But yeah, consumer desktop market just doesn't really matter, guys. AMD is dominating in most of the other fields. NVIDIA, it does have a strong hold on, like I said, professional and server side. But I don't know if AMD's ever really going to get into the AI game, though. I think they might just let NVIDIA keep that. From everything we're seeing, from feature parity and whatnot, they're basically letting Microsoft deal with the AI upscaling because, I mean, that's very expensive technology to come up with, and it's a very new field. So, I don't know. NVIDIA will probably still keep that area. Like I said, they can have 100% of the desktop market. It's not going to matter to AMD. Honestly, they couldn't care less if they never sold a desktop graphics card again. It's nice extra money for technology they already have, but, you know, like I said, once they start coming out with single board computers that are fast enough to play your games on your TV just fine, and you're going to be perfectly happy with the performance and image quality and all the rest of that, basically like Xbox Series S level APUs, dirt cheap. You know, what's NVIDIA going to do, you know? And the biggest key there is going to be the AI upscaling. Like, NVIDIA could do it now. Problem is, NVIDIA can't make x86 CPUs. Imagine if NVIDIA could make x86 APUs right now with DLSS 2.0. They would basically be running the world because it would be in every single laptop, and hell, they'd be integrating them right into televisions and displays. That's how big of a deal that would be. But because they can't make x86 CPUs, they had to buy ARM, and that's going to take a few years to finalize, and then it's going to take a few years for them to go ahead and make it all work, and so they got pushed back. AMD, in the meantime, they can take advantage of that right now if they really wanted to. It's really strange that they haven't focused in on that market yet. Perhaps they were waiting for RDNA on APUs. It's my only thought on that. I imagine Nintendo will be moving off NVIDIA in future products. NVIDIA doesn't really play nice with partners. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure they're going to do the Switch Plus or Switch Pro or whatever, and that's going to use the Volta-based APU from NVIDIA. So until they switch up, no pun intended, but until they switch up like their type of device, so as long as they keep using like the tablet Switch type device, they're probably going to stick with NVIDIA because backwards compatibility with x86, even if AMD does have a superior chip out at a better price, which, you know, they probably would at that point, none of the old games would work. So that's a real problem there. So they're kind of tied to NVIDIA unless they want to drop backwards compatibility, which, NVIDIA or Nintendo might end up doing. What do you play on? So I rarely actually play on this. Most of the time I play on the Xbox, to be honest with you, especially now that I got the OLED. The only games that I don't like playing are, like I said, like 30 FPS titles. Not really the best. Once you get up to 60 FPS, like I said, that smoothness level is so good that it's fine. So any games that run at 60 FPS on there, that works fine. But this right here, I mean, this is 2600X. Just got the RTX 2060 in there, which is pretty nice. Like I said, DLSS really helps out on those really demanding titles. So even this little guy is pumping out 4K. at acceptable frame rates, which is crazy. But so 2600X, X470, 16 gigs, DDR4 3000. So nothing super crazy. But yeah, I mean, it works. Runs the channel just fine. But yeah, I don't really game down here anymore. Just not comfortable sitting in a chair like this anymore playing video games. Once you own a house and you have recliners and all the rest of that, that's way nicer. So long as Nintendo uses ARM, Nintendo will use NVIDIA. Yes, absolutely. Hello, Manuel Lopez from Brazil. He's just saying hi. Hello. All right, so we've been going for about an hour and 25 minutes. So we're going to do about 5 to 10 more minutes. So get any questions in. Like I said, if you want to guarantee your question will get answered, Super Chat, super helpful. I'll reiterate, this is where that funding goes into getting this stuff on hands. I still need a 5600 XT, GTX 1060, and then obviously the 3060 when that comes out, and then the AMD 6600 XT. So I'm expecting those Q1 next year. Hopefully they're all 12 gigabyte cards. That's really where those things need to be. So hopefully that's the case. Let's see. RIS isn't an AI upscaler. Nope. But I found that it's just as effective as NVIDIA's DLSS. I haven't. The performance uplift just isn't enough. It just kind of cleans up the image a little bit, but DLSS, like I said, it'll take like a pretty raw image and make it pretty damn nice. All right. Thread just stopped by to say hi. Hello. All right. Do you think we will get something like Xbox APU on AM5? I actually think they will split the APUs and the non-APU CPUs up. So I think they'll probably be an FM5 type motherboard next time around, with lots of CUs because of the memory bandwidth from DDR5. So yeah, I'm thinking that something maybe on the line of the Xbox Series S. I'm sure AMD has some sort of deal with Sony and Microsoft that they can't make APUs of a certain caliber. Otherwise, it would really hurt the console platform. Or AMD would have to charge a lot more money for them, which I think they'd be okay with that part. So coming out with like a 56 CU thing like the Xbox Series S, I don't think that they'll go quite that high. And DDR5, even with the Infinity Cache, isn't really going to be enough for something like that. I mean, that's using 320-bit GDDR6, and that's with Infinity Cache because it's RDNA 2, so it's got the Infinity Cache in there. So that has more bandwidth than the 6900 XT. Just think about that. The Series X has more bandwidth than the 6900 XT. That's pretty ridiculous. But yeah, so thinking that DDR5 is going to compete with that, I just don't see that being as realistic. So probably something, like I said, on the lines of the Series S, though, which is basically a 1080p 60 plus machine, which, as I just described, for an OLED, that's really all you need. And let's say if AMD comes out with that at, I don't know, $250, you get 8 cores, 16 thread. The GPU will play all of this generation's games just fine. I mean, all they have to do is embed that on a board with RAM already on there. You just buy one thing and you're done. That to me is going to be the real game-changing moment if they decide to go that route. Now, will they? I don't know, but they could. That's definitely the route that NVIDIA is going to go if and when they get ARM. Pretty sure Navi 22 is 12 gigabytes and will be 1440p card. Yeah, it makes sense to be 12 gigabytes, 192-bit bus, and then, Navi 23, 128-bit bus, 8 gigabytes. And then I'm assuming I've seen something about a Navi 24. And looking at the price points where things are at now, it'll basically be like the RX 550, which is basically just like an APU's version of a GPU, like super light. But that'll probably be 64-bit with 4 gigs of RAM. That'll be like your $100 GPU. if they even bothered to come out with it. Get 6600 or 6700 XT. It has 12 gigabytes. I'm pretty sure. I would assume that the 6600 XT also will. More than likely, that'll be based on Navi 22 instead of Navi 23. That'd be my guess. But basically, I don't want to buy any GPUs over $300. That's going to be the top point. For a lot of you guys, that's as much as you're willing to spend on a graphics card anyway. So I want to see how like the $250 to $300 GPU from each generation compares, and then we'll continuously like test out new games, see if maybe AMD starts pulling ahead or if Nvidia starts pulling ahead in certain titles. Just like how we saw the RX 580 eventually overtake the GTX 1060 over time. So that's why I think 3 generations should be enough. You know, going back to 2016, if you're really using anything less than a 1060 or a RX 580 8 gig, you know, a year or so from now, you should probably upgrade. What do you think about Apple? I don't really think about Apple all that much, to be honest with you. Their M1 and future generations, the M2, M3. Yeah, I don't really pay attention to Apple, to be perfectly honest with you. Till Apple starts selling products outside of Apple, you know, machines, I have little interest. If anyone wants an RTX 3090 for $2,500, they have loads of stock. Yeah, I'm sure you can get it very easily for that price point. All right, AMD made a mistake launching all their products within 1 month. Consoles, excuse me. Oh. All right, get that out of the way. Consoles, CPUs, GPUs, too much pressure. Should have staggered it. I don't know. From the way things seem, you know, maybe it was some sort of cooperative effort with Sony and Microsoft. Like they couldn't talk about RDNA or something like that till the consoles were basically out. I don't know. I don't know what the inner workings are there. I don't think that that's what really matters. I'm pretty sure the consoles are on 7nm plus, and then Zen 3 and RDNA 2, those are both on 7nm P. So those aren't the same thing. So they don't switch. You can't just put one on the other. So I do think that they separated those enough. Zen 3 was not supposed to come out this year. That was almost confirmed a while ago. So that launch I knew was basically going to be vaporware because it wasn't even supposed to be out. They rushed the launch of that for RDNA 2. So yeah, perhaps they took away a little bit of supply from RDNA 2 to get Zen 3 out. But for them, and from a marketing perspective, making sure that reviewers have to use AMD CPUs in their GPU reviews is a very smart move. And for them, whether that pisses you off or not, for AMD, that's the better play. So I think that they made the right call on that one, especially with something like SAM, which, yeah, everybody's like, well, NVIDIA says that they can do it. Well, yeah, and NVIDIA or AMD says that they can do DLSS. I don't take AMD at their word, and I don't take NVIDIA at their word. So until NVIDIA can do it, they don't got it. And honestly, if you're buying a 6000 series GPU, AMD has made a very compelling reason for you to go ahead and buy, you know, their new Zen 3 CPUs. Once again, the shitty part is you can't get them. And like I said, the only reason why they're even here yet is just for the reviewers. So yeah, I can see why a lot of people are upset. It's the whole like ecosystem, but it's all about marketing. And you guys know how much I bashed AMD about marketing for a while. That was a good marketing move by AMD. Tying the CPU and GPU together for optimal performance and making sure the reviewers had these CPUs and stuff on hand. It's marketing, guys. And AMD being so much smaller than NVIDIA and Intel, they have to do what they have to do. So I'm not going to hold it against them. NVIDIA, however, I don't know what the hell they were thinking. I mean, they're one of the largest companies on the planet. It's like, come on, guys. They should have their supply chain under lock. Now, granted, it could be that they knew what RDNA 2 was going to be and what they were going to offer, and were like, all right, we got to scrap this, you know, late in the day. And, you know, they might have already had some cards produced, and we're like, yeah, well, we got to ship these because we don't want to lose money. So let's do that first, and then we'll figure this out a few months later. I don't know. Perhaps that's how it went. But the way that NVIDIA has been reacting to the whole situation here is a bit odd for them. Nowadays, it seems to be okay. 3080s and 3070s seem to come in stock reasonably regular. They get sold out real quick, but at the very least, they're showing up. But yeah, it took about a month or so before the 3080s really started getting restocked. So not entirely sure what NVIDIA is doing, but it could just be that they're planning on scrapping the 3080 and 3070 a couple months from now. So yeah, I don't know how long those are really going to be, viable or hold their value. What do you think about Moore's Law is dead versus Cortex? I don't know actually anything about that. Are they going through a spat? Are they spatting? I'm actually surprised that I don't know about that. I talk to Celso, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 times a week. We keep up on each other pretty good. He's the one who actually pushed me to get the OLED because he kept trying to describe it to me. Kind of the way that I was trying to describe it to you guys. And it just doesn't work. Until you see it, you don't actually know. And then once I watched some TV on it, and that looks the same. I mean, image quality is nicer than my old television, but that doesn't change all that much because, it's low frame rate stuff. So that doesn't really matter. The second I turned on that Xbox, though, even the menu in the Xbox, because that's at 60 FPS, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I instantly knew and instantly saw the difference. DLSS is great. Sam is only great sometimes. Well, I guess you could argue DLSS is only great sometimes too, because it's only in certain games. Now, here's one of the big arguments that I have for DLSS. 3 of the biggest titles coming out this holiday season, so that's Watch Dogs, Call of Duty, and Cyberpunk. They all have DLSS. So if all the big titles support it, those are the only titles that you really need. I mean, smaller titles, you could just use regular rasterization performance and it works fine. But it's the big AAA titles, that's really where you want that extra performance. So if NVIDIA can keep bribing, the companies with the biggest, titles of the year, yeah, DLSS will still be useful for most people. But Sam, I mean, that's a good 5-10 extra % across the board. And that pulls the 6800 ahead of the 680 or the 3080 and really makes the 6800 XT, like I said, a 3080 or 3090 competitor a lot of the time. And that's super impressive. Just like the 6800 is actually really a 3080 competitor. Like I said, with Sam on and some tweaking, you can get that up to and beating the RTX 3080 for $579. So AMD has undercut NVIDIA in pretty interesting ways. The problem is AMD does not have a 3070 competitor and has nothing in that sub $500 price point, which would be really nice. But I think that's their big miss. They don't have a sub $500 graphics card for the holiday season, but it is what it is. Imagine someone like Google, Amazon, Microsoft buying AMD. I mean, they could. I mean, those companies have the money to do it. I don't think Microsoft will. I think they like keeping their partnership going. The problem is right now AMD is, they're becoming more valuable by the day. So if anybody was going to do it, they should have done it pre-ZEN3. So I'm sure there's a lot of companies kicking themselves because they probably thought about buying them and they're like, yeah, let's just see how this ZEN3 thing works. And then AMD stock skyrockets and then it's like, well, shit, now they're too expensive. Let's see. You guys are talking about Moore's Law and Celso here. So, Moore's Law, what the fuck, bragging like crazy. He wasn't that accurate. Okay. Yeah, I don't really get into the whole tech tuber spit and spats. That's not my jam. So I'm just not gonna comment on that. Yeah, we're just gonna leave that alone. 6900 XT or 3090. OLED. Buy an OLED. If you have an OLED, then 6900 XT. It's a lot cheaper and it's going to be just as fast, if not faster. Apple would buy AMD. Maybe. I don't know. Apple's kind of already designed their own stuff, though. You know, they have their own GPUs and stuff now. They've designed their own CPUs. They've kind of already done all the work, so I don't see why they would want to buy AMD. I was offered an R9 or an R5 3600 for $550 today in a YouTube ad. Is that US dollars or is that something else? Because if that's US dollars, that is insane. But yeah, even Zen 2 CPUs, they're flying off the shelves. That's why I bought that 3700X. It was on sale. It was $300. And I'm like, man, I saw them at like $280, you know, a couple of months ago. So I was kind of hoping for Black Friday they'd get down to that again, but they're not because they're all selling out. OLED is too big. Sit further away. Trust me, I'll be doing videos on how to overcome that limitation. It's like 48 inch, too big for a monitor. You don't use it as a monitor. You use it as a gaming display. Your monitor is used for work, and then the OLED is used for gaming. Like I said, we'll be doing videos on that. How's the new OLED working out for you? Okay, so we talked a lot about that in this video. There's going to be a dedicated video. I'll try to get it out tomorrow. And then, like I said, I'll bring up all of the arguments and show you all the evidence. But like I said, I can't show you how it looks when you're not watching an OLED. So if you missed that conversation, you kind of want to get a preview, and you missed earlier on in the stream, if you go over to patreon.com/thegoodoldgamer, it's where I post all of the live streams. I unlist them from YouTube because YouTube likes to hurt your numbers and stuff if you do live streams. So unlisting it kind of saves that. So you can go back and you can rewatch the stream. But I go into it pretty deep in this one if you want to hear about OLED and kind of where the channel's going, because it's a big deal. It's a much bigger deal than video cards and CPUs. And honestly, that kind of stuff I'm going to really be moving away from because it's not that interesting. Because once you have the OLED, then you pretty much just have set targets that you want to hit. And as long as what you have hits those targets, you don't need anything else. So that's one of the main benefits to the OLED is you spend a lot of money on the display, get the best experience possible, and then you don't need to buy big hardware. I guess that's probably the takeaway. So you don't need big GPUs and you don't need big CPUs for gaming. Now for workloads and other things, that's separate. But as far as gaming goes, you don't need a whole lot, which is awesome. All right. Please best cheap CPU for RX 580 and how much years it can run. Well, I mean, that might be something that I'll look into. Like I said, maybe I'll get like a 3100, a Ryzen 3100, 4-core 8-thread and kind of see how long that'll hold off. Like I said, that's going to eventually get overrun once next-gen consoles are fully utilized. So, but for now, and probably through next year, it'd probably be all you need for gaming. Same thing goes with the i3-10100. Probably the only CPU you really need for gaming. Cheapest motherboard, cheapest RAM. Well, RAM you can get a little bit better because it's like $5 more and you jump like 500 megahertz. So on that side, be better off there. OLED, CRT, FPS marketing. I don't understand what you mean on that one, man. OLED Master Race. Yes. Yeah, I guess that's basically what I'll be cultivating. OLED Master Race, because until you have one, you're gaming wrong. That's kind of the short and skinny of it. Just wait till his wife discovers OLED. Oh, she likes it. She's been playing. She's a big fan of those Crash Bandicoot games. I got her that new Crash 4, and she's been having fun with that. Let's see. My G-Sync monitor is really keeping me back from buying AMD. Will G-Sync ever work on AMD? No, not if it's got the chip inside of it. NVIDIA designed it that way. It's just like DLSS will never work on AMD. AMD has to come up with their own solution. Also, any specific RTX features in, DXR games will not work on AMD. So That's the reason why NVIDIA will never create standards, because they don't. Until NVIDIA creates their own closed ecosystem like Apple, where their standards are the only option, basically they'll come out with new tech and then the open source community or somebody else is going to make it, and that's going to be the standard. That's just the way that's always going to work. Is OLED game changing like 144 hertz? Like I said, rewatch the stream. I go into it in more detail, but yes, it's actually way bigger than 144 hertz. Makes 144 hertz look like a joke. It's the biggest gaming leap in technology since we moved to 3D. That's probably the best way for me to put it. I guess VR people probably feel that way as well. So if you're like one of the few VR enthusiasts and you're like, this is the best thing ever, it's kind of like that. Except it's more accessible because it works with everything. You just plug anything in there and all your games work on it, and they are better. I take NVIDIA and AMD at their word for SAM and DLSS. Don't take anybody at their word, especially not a company. Until it's a real thing, it doesn't exist. Aren't 3100s and 3300s still hard to find? The 3100 you can get. You can't get the 3300. I don't even think they make them anymore. But the 3100s, they're back up to like 120. Actually, they jumped up to 130 the other day. I'm like, get out of here. You know, the Intel equivalent's like 105. So I'm like, I might actually buy the Intel platform because of how cheap it is, to be honest with you. Let's see. OLED 0.1 millisecond instantaneous response time. Yes, it still has processing time inside of it. A scaler still has to do its thing. But yes, it's faster than it's faster than my 144 hertz display here. It's very, very quick. No, 120 hertz on an OLED is better than 360 hertz on an LCD, any LCD. 60 hertz, you can definitely tell the difference between 60 and 120 on the OLED. So I'd say 60 is probably better than 144, but worse than 240 on an LCD. Uh, 3300X are available outside the US, but 35X is a better deal. I don't even think they sell 3500Xs here. I've never seen one. Are ZEN3 R3 CPUs vaporware? No. You can buy, like I said, at least for me, I can buy a 3100 at any time. They're just getting a little pricier than I'd like to pay for them. That's where Intel's really looking attractive, is on that really, really low end, which is what they need to do. They don't have the performance crown. Sell your stuff so cheap that it's like, well, shit, I might as well buy that. So they're starting to figure that out, I think. What do you think of 3080 Ti? Or are they going to kill off the 3090? No, they're going to keep the 3090. And they're probably going to keep it at the same price point, to be perfectly honest with you. They're just going to be like, if you want it, it's $1,500. But yeah, I think the 3080 Ti will kill off the 3080. Hey, Chris, weren't plasma TVs refreshed like something like 600 hertz? Can't remember. Yes, they were 600 hertz, but they had huge input delay. It took so long for the display to process it that it doesn't matter how fast it was in hertz. And like I said, OLED is just way better. 60 hertz on OLED is better than any gaming experience you've probably ever had. I'm just going to put it to you that way. 1080p 60 on an OLED is better than whatever else you've ever played on. That's just my opinion. It's that game changing. 120 FPS or 120 hertz 1080p is way better than anything you've ever played on. So I don't have anything strong enough to run 4K 120 yet, but you know, that I'm thinking is going to be pretty much just like the pinnacle of gaming. But like I said, I'm not that interested in dumping that kind of cash. So 1080p 120, you don't need a whole lot to run that. I mean, even this card right here, this guy, this is 2060, that's overkill for 1080p 120. So yeah, you can really cheap out and just get a much better gaming experience. So alrighty, guys, I think we're gonna stop it there. We went way over today, so this is pretty fun. We talked about a lot of stuff. Hope you guys check out the OLED review video. Well, it's not really gonna be a review; it's more of an impressions video. I went through a lot of the topics here today with you. I wanted to get your feedback and kind of respond, but yeah, like I said, if you're not gaming on an OLED, you really should consider it if you can fit it. Now, if you're in like a little tiny 8x10 room and it's just not possible for you, that's one thing. But, you know, for anybody out there that can sit 5-10 feet away from the thing, you should be able to make it work. And if you want to hear more of my thoughts here today, just head over to Patreon. Links are in the description right now to here. I'm going to go ahead and post it up so you can watch the stream over and over again if you want to, or rewatch it. And yeah, so that's it. Thank you all for coming and hanging out with me on this lovely Saturday. It's a little cloudy, a little gloomy here. I think I'm going to go get an energy drink before I try to record the OLED video. Maybe I'll do that later today, tomorrow. I'm going to try to get the video out tomorrow, but might be on Monday. But thank you all for joining me. Look forward to seeing your responses in that video. And once again, if you are interested in picking up an LG OLED, because they are on sale, that's why I bought mine now, click the Amazon link in the description. I have them on there on my Good Old Gamer shop. You can just click on them and see if the prices make sense for you. Like I said, if you don't like it or if you don't agree with me, just return the thing. Make sure you can return it and then don't worry about it. But trust me, anybody that tries this out will be like, oh, yeah, you're right. And yeah, so video hopefully tomorrow. Look forward to seeing your guys' responses then. Thank you all for joining me, and I will catch you guys in the next video.